All right, the sugar industry and manufacturers who use their products are up in arms over the spike in the sugar tax. The Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana announced that the sugar tax will be increased to R2.31 per gram. Critics say this will mean less investment and further job losses. They also argue that the tax unfairly impacts the poor the hardest. But those who argue for the tax say it helps the poor make healthier choices. Millhouse International founder Andre Redinger joins me now to speak about this tax. So it's either sweet news or not so sweet, depending on which side of the argument you stand. Andre. So is it sweet, not sweet, the increase in this sugar tax announced by Enoch Godongwana from your vantage point?
Tula, I don't think it should be combined as sweet or not sweet. I think we should look at the purpose of the sugar tax. The sugar tax is to address primarily obesity. What is not being looked at is the overall industry in which it impacts and those livelihoods that depend on that industry. I believe that a more multidisciplinary, more various role plays from all parts could look at this in a way in terms of how we could impact the community positively, focusing more on education and awareness, focusing more on what is important in terms of nutrition. It needs to be remembered that obesity means that is lacking it doesn't mean that the individual has all the nutrients they require. It's very important that whether the person is undernourished or obese, we're talking about nutrition here. And also we're talking about individuals whose livelihoods depends on the income to purchase staple foods. And it is only those staple foods, that basket, which people can afford. By increasing the price of these critical foods, where they obtain the energy from, including sugar, is a negative impact on our population, especially the vast population. It's different sitting in a situation where it could be an urban high-ending environment where one has a great choice of nutritional products. But when one is where most of us South Africans are, and most South Africans are positioned, sugar carries energy, it's got kilojoules, and most can't afford heaps of sugar. It is what they purchase, what they need, as maize, as flour. And we need perspective here. So I wouldn't say and my approach isn't one of either side of the spectrum. Yeah. What's more important is the middle road and seeing how we can together find solutions to address obesity, which, by the way, has not improved since the last sugar tax increase.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying the approach doesn't have to be binary, that it's either sweet news that we have a sugar tax increase or it's not so sweet news, but that it should be more nuanced. Are you saying, Andre, therefore, that people who assume that the sugar tax is about people who go out and buy a 2-liter bottle of a fizzy drink at the garage, and go and indulge in that, or ice cream or things like those, that actually there's more to the sugar tax, that it actually hits staples? Which staples, for example, that are bought by the poor get affected by the sugar tax? Andre, do I still have you on the line? I think I may have lost Andre there. I don't know what happened. The connection did seem a bit shaky a bit earlier on. It's a pity. We'll see what we can do if we can get him back on the line to continue the conversation. I think we can try again. Andre, I don't know if you caught my question. I was asking, many people.
Did.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Tula, it's again about perspective. It's what does the poor person have as a luxury in terms of what can they afford? If you look at the township, what is available in the small shop in the township and what is accessible to them? What can they afford to fill their tummy? What they can afford to create a little bit of space, spectrum and variety in their food basket? We're talking moderation here. We should rather educate moderation, Tula, rather than a litre of Coke a day. It's about sharing what is available and what is accessible with the limited revenue and disposable income people have. So again, remember also the lives that depend on the manufacture of that Coke bottle in South Africa, albeit a small sweet, albeit another product in terms of a drink. There are other people involved in manufacturing that. It's the people that we are affecting the most in terms of receiving the relevant support in terms of addressing their nutritional status and what they require. And to remove and to increase expenses on products that most people are using as staple foods. I do refer staple foods not only to the maize, the flour, the millie meal, but what else does a mom take home when she would like to treat her child? And, in this income bracket, Tula, they can't afford liters and liters of Coke. Guatemala is a very good example in Central America, where sugar was used as a vitamin carrier. And people argued that the population will just simply consume more sugar because now it's been associated with as a vitamin carrier.
Yeah.
Results of the last 20 years show that the increase in consumption did not take place because the per capita income of people, what they can afford, does not increase. The sugar tax may increase, but where's the sugar tax going as well? Is it going to an industry and helping them maybe diversify the product line? So also it can...
All right. I think it's a bit intermittent, that connection with Andre Redinger. So I think we give it a few seconds for it to regain connection strength, and then we can pick up the conversation. Andre, I believe you are back. Lastly, then, given the difficulties we are experiencing, you just made the point that, the sugar intake and the impact thereof, there was no noticeable improvement since the introduction of what Treasury called the Health Promotion Levy, which you and I call the sugar tax. The organization HEALA is quite active in this space, as you know, in campaigning for this sugar tax, and they're citing some 35 experts that they say had supported an increase in this health promotion levy. They are citing some results on their website here. They're talking about after the tax being introduced. One, they're saying purchases of taxable beverages by urban households fell by 29%, and sugar content from these purchases fell by 51%. They say in Langa, in the Western Cape, young adults between 18 and 39 years reported they drank 37% less sugar-sweetened beverages and reduced their sugar intake by nearly a third. And they go on and on about results coming in from Soweto, where a study, they say, found that heavy consumers of sugar-sweetened beverages dropped their intake by 7 times a week. So it would seem they're saying the results are there, Andre. Given what we've seen with what happens with comorbidities in the time of COVID, how can you say that, there's no result? All right. Difficulties continue there with that connectivity. Andre, thank you for your inputs in this conversation. Unfortunately, our line really doesn't allow for us to have a quality conversation on this really critical area of policy. There was Millhouse International founder Andre Redinger weighing in on the sugar tax in this country that has increased from budget 2022.